So, let's talk about Testament. I've been asked for a Testament guide for a while now. They are pretty different from the last version. Not because of like how they play. What is especially good about them now is Arbiter. I've talked a little bit about this in the past, but basically, as a Testament player, this is actually the benchmark for your gameplay. Like, you will be using this a lot. With the new changes to Arbiter in the last patch, with Stain, this is +5. Without Stain, it's about -12, but you can see it pushes them quite far. And this also applies FD as well. If you FD it, or you get in a position where you have to FD it, or even if you get like an accidental IVFD, this does still apply pushback. So this is relevant for chip out situations. Because it's about only -12 now, it's very rare a lot of the cast will be able to punish you. Kai is actually a good example of a character who could. It's rare that they'll be able to deal with this. So this is like one of your best screen positioning tools, specifically the low version, because it's a little faster. We'll talk about their general kit, excluding Arbiter. So like 2P is very good. It's especially very good on offense. It's one of your safest pressure options because the way that Stain works, it actually will have a 3-frame gap between it. So this automatically frame traps, which is very, very good. It's one of the best ways to start pressure against someone, especially mid-screen, in case they backdash it. 5k is also very strong. It's incredibly strong this version because they also buff the recovery, and it goes pretty far. Pretty much how your game plan will go is like that, almost every time. This is like your end game goal as Testament. You stay in them, you get them to the corner, you keep leaving it basically, right? They don't get as much immediate return unless it's off a very specific hit, right? That's usually the best case scenario for them, outside of meter. If they have meter, hit confirming into the Succubus super is very, very strong. But otherwise, most of your return is going to be off of setting up Stain, and you go from there. So the main buttons to do this, because of how good 2D is, specifically how far it goes, is 2k 2D, 5k 2D, and sometimes it's okay off of TP for hit confirming without a counter hit. 2k will also low profile, and of course they have the God 6p. I feel like everyone knows about this character's 6p. This is like definitely one of the best in the game, if not the best, for how it hits. Outside of the return, of course, unless you are Stain. Let's talk about their neutral. So neutral, get ready to match on Faraz, because this move is so fucking good now. There's not as much of a hurt box at the extended tip of it, which means if you're in a position where you can kind of like pressure them with like the tip of Faraz, it's very hard for them to deal with. And this also contributes into why Arbiter is so good. If you want a more disjointed one, 5H is your answer. It also leads to slightly more damage on counter hit, or a ton in the corner. You get a lot. In fact, you can even make this wall spot. Crow, after a certain point, it'll always fly in the direction of wherever it's coming from. So for example, if you do it when it's coming back from the first fly, you can actually send it back at waist level. This is especially very good against the taller characters like Gold Lewis, Potemkin, Nago. For the most part, they'll be able to hit those characters standing, whereas otherwise you won't be able to. So Crow is very important. If you hold it, of course, it will not go to the Succubus. 2H and 6H. So these moves are both very good, but they're very situational. 6H gets a lot of damage, it covers a lot of space, and usually is some of the best options, or one of the best options you can use for dealing with jump outs in the corner especially. But of course it's quite slow, and it has an extended hurt block, so this can be 6-speed. 2H is very good, but very slow. But the advantage of it is basically nobody can punish this. It's about, I'd say 2. I think it's -2 on block, which means usually most people are just going to respect it. And of course, like I mentioned earlier, they get a lot of damage off of hit confirming this. In fact, it is one of their, I think it is actually their best starter. Even on regular hit, you can get a lot of damage off of it. So those are like the two moves that I think are very important for understanding the character. Depending on like matchups, like usually if they're very footsies based, 2H is very strong. If they're very focused on jumping, 6H can also be very strong. But of course, they can double jump it due to how slow it is as well. So let's talk a little more, now that we've kind of got their moves out of the way. We need to talk about their strategy, which I feel like is the real reason why everyone asked me to make a guide. But I wanted to talk about, like, you use 5k in neutral, it's very strong. 2k is also very strong. The goal is you get them staying. But I feel like a lot of people don't know how to put it all together. So I'm going to explain the end game goal. Number one is that with how Arbiter is now, and the reason why it's so strong is because it allows you to essentially zone characters and make them actually preemptively adjust to fight you. So a good example of what I mean is, let's say you're full screen, right? This cannot hit you, right? Which means if you actually decide to run in, it will catch you. If they're stained, one, you actually can combo into it again if you wanted, but it basically just leads into the same sort of interaction, right? Where you zone them and you just keep walking them to the corner. Being able to walk a character to the corner without even doing that much shit is very strong. Like, not many characters can do this. Now, you can jump this, but there's also a problem with this. You have Crow, for one. The other is also that you have one of the best 6Ps in the game, if not the best 6P in the game. You also have this as well. So you have a lot of very, very good anti-airs. You actually get a better situation if they actually start jumping, right? Because if you hit them with Crow, it can be very bad. Not just because of how Crow comes out, but because you get the second Crow after. The second Crow is very important for a variety of reasons. In fact, in pressure, it's extremely important for Nostrovia, because you can see it actually comes back at an angle from the bottom of the screen. Let's see if I can catch it. See? So as soon as the Crow appears, you can reuse it again, and you continue pressure with it. It basically is another chance to start offense. Another thing that is very important for them in that way is Jump D. Jump D is also very strong if they start using the air. One, they also get some of the best combos from it. Which one combos? There we go. Essentially, they want you to jump at them. Like, that's like their end game goal. All of their return is way better if you jump in on them, which in turn, this either means you jump at them preemptively to avoid like dealing with Arbiter, which, this is not even for the mix-up. It's purely about how much space it controls. The fact that you can do a high-low off it is like bonus. I don't even think about it though. And also the low Arbiter actually gives you more damage. It's a 10% scaling in comparison to the overhit's 20%. With that in mind, essentially we just use Arbiter. It's like landmines. So here's the most important thing about Testament by far, okay? When you play them normally, most of the time you're not gonna get return, right? Like, again, their strategy is built around getting stand, and like that's really it. It's very uncommon that they'll get a lot of damage without, like, consistently. You would have to get counter hit a lot. But with Stain, everything they do becomes like life-threatening. Which means your number one priority is always play around Stain. And not only just as Testament, but as a character playing against Testament. Because even like 2P, for example, like, they got this meter. For some reason, they gain meter when Stain procs. This is not common in Guilty Gear. This is actually like the opposite of what they would normally do. You can actually see when it pops, you gain a lot of meter. It's like, I don't know, it's like maybe like 5%. When you loop this, you can see it becomes like very easy to build meter, like extremely fast, right? This also means that if you're playing against Testament, if you just let them keep doing this, they gain a lot of meter. With all these things considered, if you want to be very successful against Testament, it's all about playing around meter and screen positioning as well as Steam. That's like the key factor. You have to consider it at every single point. If you do not, then, you know, you'll have some interaction like this, where because they gain meters so easily, it's very common for them to just hit confirm into super. And of course, that's the other problem with playing too slow against them. Because, like, if you do nothing, they're gonna just keep doing this over and over again. Now, of course, this means they do have some weaknesses in some matchups where they can't set up Stain as easily. Like, it's not necessarily a bad matchup, but like, for example, Nago, you cannot throw fireballs for a huge portion of it, which means you have to play with your normals, which in turn can be kind of dicey. If you use like your normals, you just play safe, then once he gets the 2 blood, it becomes very easy to just bulldoze him with your own Stain, right? It's like, they don't need to use Stain all the time. It's just in the fact that, like, their ground buttons are so fucking good. It's just their ground buttons are so good that they don't need to, like, force shit. Like, they are very close to, like, an old mid-range character, which is, like, it's something I like a lot for Testament. In fact, like, I'm sure most people would agree that with the current Arbiter, they're basically very similar to how they used to be in terms of, like, just filling the screen with shit. Though a little less egregious, I would say. Depending on the character, they can RPS differently out of every interaction, right? But usually, like, if you think they're gonna 6p on pressure or on defense, that's when you'd want to use Arbiter. Usually if they're only stained. At this range, you'd want to be careful of the stain. But again, this is +5, so I mean, nobody is going to be able to stop Faras because Faras is about 11 frames, and it also is slightly disjointed, so no one's hitting this shit. But even if you expect 6p because of that, then low Arbiter will punish and give you a very good combo. If you need disjointed normals, 5H is the best for it. If you think they're going to jump, 6H or Crow is very, very good, as well as H Fireball if they're very obvious. I would only use H Fireball if they're like super obvious with how they jump. And of course 6P is very good, as well as Jumpy. So you can see they have a lot of options for every interaction. It's just understanding where you put X option, or like how you deal with them in what situation. Again, you can't play them the same way when they have stand. Depending on the hit stop of the move is what decides how plus it is. So like, for example, 5H is not as advantageous as 5K. Faras is not as advantageous as 5K, so on, right? Usually a 2P is going to be your option for dealing with it. I didn't talk much about 2S, but this is also pretty okay for it's some matchups where you have to be more considerate of lows. But again, like, Faras is basically better in every way. Like, Faras is so fucking good. The only situation that this is better is when it's, like, the startup matters. Oh, actually, one thing I should talk about that not a lot of people use is actually Air Grave. This is actually really strong, especially if you air dash back and, like, use the landing to cancel your recovery. In fact, this is actually something very good against the taller characters as well. H is also good, but understand that this, like, juices up your hurt box hella, right? So if they do run up 6 feet of this, you're gonna die. Just to add on, there's also teleport. Teleport is not really that great. Outside of select situations, they have to always be afraid of the succubus, because if they just run at you, you'll get out, right? But if they just sit there and guard, like, the succubus, then that lets you extend pressure, like, even further without even doing anything, right? Which, again, is the goal. This is actually, like, it's a classic Venom thing. Honestly, the best thing about teleport is that you can feint it by holding it. If they show that they will look for teleport, I just feint and then I throw the crow anyways. To me, they feel very strong. In fact, Arbiter alone, like, I can't emphasize enough how fucking good this move is. In fact, if you have to take one thing away and you just, like, you're like, I don't care, Cal Lady, you're like talking, but I'm not listening. Give me the Testament tech. I would say just press just do the Arbiter button, you know? That's the takeaway I want you to have from this.